All right, look, we're starting a little early because I have two things you need to know. First of all, three things really. First of all, one, the podcast is essentially paused until Monday. I need a few days to get some projects done for some people, and I'm not going to have enough time to really dedicate focus to sit down and really crank out some high quality stuff. So give me a few days and we'll get back on course with that. No sweat. Second thing, sort of related, sort of not related. There's been a lot of news in a lot of my spaces about creators making things and doing stuff, and that's cool. I'm down for that. But you got to understand, a lot of the people who were bold renegades doing a new thing and then it just caught on, it is inevitable that they're going to sell out, and they're going to be exactly the people who they talked about not wanting to be when it comes time for them to go do it. Of course they're putting out another cartoon. Of course they're rolling out another thing. Of course they're doing this. They're not there because they love the game anymore. They're there because, well, they like the money and this is their job. Their job is to voice cartoons, and their job is to do this, and the game was just this random thing they took off, and it was great, good for them, but you got to understand, punk rock doesn't stay punk rock over and over and over. Eventually your punk rock band sells out and it's time to find a new band. That's a really important message I want to get across today. Last thing, third thing. You know what you can do? You right now, you listening to this, you the people, what you can do? Take some time tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend, whatever, and find what makes you happy. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's root beer or butts or armpits or hips or rock music or socks or your cat or a dog or I don't know what, but find it and embrace it, because too many of these things in this world are short term and we don't spend nearly enough time and energy and care embracing them and caring for them while we're here. Do not neglect and do not sleep on the fact that things can change, even the stuff we love. So while you have it, while you feel it, do something with it. Super important. All right, let's get this thing started, shall we? Where's my button? Let's see. Here it is.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
The fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
Oh boy, oh boy. Oh man, there we are. Hey, look at that. Hi everybody, how are you? I forgot to put the graphic up. Oh man, hang on a minute. Let's put the graphic up. Let's get this done right. What are we doing, John? Why did we forget to put the graphic up? That's a thing. There, nope, that's too big. But anyway, yes, it is the writer's chat. Nope, still the wrong size. That is the writer's chat for January the 25th? Oh man, it's the last Wednesday in January. Oh wow. Hi. How are you? Wow, you are really close today. What's up? Hi. It's been a crazy day. I hope you're doing okay. I'm doing all right. Things are wacky in the wide world of me, but it's good to be here, and I'm so thankful you're here. If this is the first time you're checking this out, hi. I'm John. It's my job to help you write better, and this is the Writer's Chat, where we're going to answer questions from all across social media. But first, we're going to do the regular intro I normally do. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, planners, punk rockers, enthusiasts, nudists, anybody who's not yet sold out, anybody who doesn't give a hot rat's ass about a new cartoon and a multi-million-dollar ink deal when you can't scrape together $10 for fucking lunch, any writer who's still struggling out there trying to get their stuff done, anybody who's decided to sort of shed old beliefs in favor of new helpful ones, anybody who's ever exercised their boundaries, people who like to feed their pets, anybody who's ever had to drive in snow and ice, anybody who's ever liked nacho cheese, ballerinas, hip-hop enthusiasts, anybody who's ever considered vaguely giving up coffee for 2 days to see if it'll help them sleep better, and most importantly, the comrades. Hi. Welcome. Yeah, it's going to be one of those days. There's some spice coming. Strap in. We're going to get good tonight. But I hope you're doing well. Wherever you are doing whatever you're doing, I hope you're doing well. I've missed you. It's good to see you. You want to answer some questions? I think we got to answer some questions. Question number 1. If I'm starting a book, is a dream sequence better than a dialogue scene? Okay. One is not better than the other just by it being a thing. It's not like automatically dialogue scenes are bad or automatically dream sequences are bad. When we talk about a thing being like not the best tool for the job, like, oh God, another dream sequence, ugh. It's not because it's just a dream sequence. It's that the dream sequence, as it's written on the page, is not particularly well written and is not as engaging as something else could be. A dialogue scene, much the same thing. Oh, God, more people talking. It can get real tiring real fast. It depends on how it's written. One of the major problems with dream sequences is that the character eventually has to wake up, whether that's in the middle of the chapter or the middle of the scene or the end of the chapter or at some point, whatever you're developing in that dream sequence has to stop. Because unless the whole book is created while the character dreams, dream sequences are short-term and temporary. The character has to wake up, the world has to go, the story has to move on. So even if that dream sequence is, the heaviest revelation of plot or prophecy as to what's going to happen 10 chapters later, okay, I mean, that's a little tired. We've seen that in loads of different places in different spaces. So yeah, not necessarily the best tool if you want to grab and engage your reader, but it's certainly a choice you can make. Now, that dialogue scene, one of the hardest things people deal with a dialogue scene is the sense that while you have these characters, however many, 2 characters, 3 characters, 10 characters talking, you've forgotten everything else. The world freezes in place like it's buffering, and then you have to try and navigate and bring everybody up to speed as all this talking is happening, but you're not moving the world around them. It doesn't feel like time is moving forward. It's really hard to be engaged when you're just hearing talking. Okay? So one is not better than the other. It depends on how you use it. I'm going to tell you, a lot of fantasy novels skew into dream sequences for starters, and that's why a lot of people kind of balk at the idea because, oh God, yet another one? There's so many other ways you could do this. Think not in terms of trying to be the most original. Don't think about it in terms of like, oh man, I've got to try and outdo everybody around me. Do the best you can. But ask yourself, is this scene, whatever the scene is that you're opening with, the best way to engage, to grab, to get that reader thinking about that mental movie? Is that really the best way? A dream sequence? That's gonna really turn the reader's brain on and get them thinking in IMAX 8K mega, what are we up to, 12.5 or 12.1 stereo? Really? That's the better question to ask. It's a good question, but don't think there's some kind of magic priority like, oh, dialogue is always better than dream. It doesn't work like that. Not even worth having that. Like, that's not a thing. Don't go down that road. Don't engage in pointless bullshit social media debates about it because they're just wrong. One is not better than the other just because of what it is. It's what you do with it that matters. Let's go hit that next question. Question number 2. What is high concept and should I care? Okay. If you're on social media and you're following pimps, agents, and you're talking to people and you're dealing with this, that, and the other, and you're watching YouTube of like weird, creepy authors saying weird, creepy shit, you're going to hear the term high concept. Here's what high concept is. It is a short presentation of the idea of a thing. So the high concept of a character is a few words you're using to summarize who and what that character is about. Not their job, not their function, not like, oh, they're the right-handed knight. Oh, they're the wizard. That is not their high concept. That is a definition of their job or the definition of their skill set. Not a high concept. A high concept is the sort of the summation of who they are. Oh, they're a person broken down by a system they have long since assumed is perennially corrupt. That's a high concept. Now, Characters are not the only things with high concept. Your plot has a high concept. It's a story of people overcoming overwhelming odds, but finding out the world is always going to crush them. Or it's the story of a superhero who accepts his role in a position of authority. A high concept is a summation of what you have going on with the thing we're talking about. High concept of plot, high concept of character, high concept of scene. What's this scene? Oh, it's the car scene. No, what's the high concept of the scene? Oh, this is where we're going to have the emotional, like, two people are going to hash it out in terms of how they feel about each other. Everything can have a high concept. The description can have a high concept. What's the high concept here? Oh, I'm trying to describe the forest as green. Whatever it is, high concept is a summation to help put into your own words the idea you're trying to get across over there when it comes to whatever you're writing. Should you care? Yeah, ish, mostly, kind of, sort of. You should care in the sense that, you should know what you're talking about and you should know how you want to talk about it. But in terms of like getting quizzed on industry jargon or getting quizzed on writing terminology, that's not a thing. Like, there's no test to make sure you understand what high concept is. It's good to know because it's useful for you directing your own stuff, but it is not critical for you in the sense that, oh my God, if I don't understand high concept, I'm never getting, my book is never getting read. No, you can totally write a book and have no goddamn idea what high concept is. It's fine, but it's useful to know because it helps organize your thoughts. I hope that answers your question. On we go to question 3. Question 3, what's the most forgiving genre for new authors? Okay, now I've closed my eyes because you can't see me roll my eyes when I do that, because we're going to talk about the word forgiving. What exactly do you think as a new author you need to be forgiven for? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I wrote this book. I'm new at this. Why are you apologizing for this thing you're doing? What did you do? Did you like break a window and blame your brother? Like, did you drink all the milk and put the empty container back in the fridge? Why do you need forgiveness? Now, if you're saying, oh no, John, I'm trying to get like a sense of what's going to afford me the best response in case I suck. Why are we assuming we're sucking? When did we get into the suck business? What's this? What are we doing? No genre is more forgiving than another genre. If that were the case, then there'd be a billion books in that genre and very few everywhere else. Because what you're talking about forgiving is the idea of whether or not your fan base is going to be real like cranky and pissy and fandomy, if that makes sense. Like everybody's just going to be all like vicious with claws out, getting ready to attack. That's true everywhere. Like, there was a time in my life where I would tell you that one of the nicest fandoms in the world was Star Wars. That is certainly not the case right now. Like, that is so not true. They are not welcoming. They're disinterested in anything that changes the status quo. And that is true for a lot of spaces with a lot of things and a lot of people. And genres can be the same way. Have you ever like talked to military sci-fi people? They're a little intense. They have a particular view as to how crunchy they want their missiles on their starships to be, and they're not very lenient when it comes to writing they disagree with. That does not mean it's bad writing. It doesn't mean you suck. It doesn't mean you wrote a bad plot. It doesn't mean you really fucked up. It just means that somebody somewhere is unhappy with what you wrote, and it's not your job to make them happy. Your job is to tell a story. And if they don't like it, that says more about them than it does about you. So you don't have to run around trying to find like the most accepting place in the world, because you're going to carve your own accepting place in this world. No genre is going to shelter you. No genre is going to be like, oh, they're new, let's be sensitive, because that's not a thing. If it was, I'd be telling you about it. It's not, how do I say this? Everywhere, somewhere, somebody's going to dislike what you do. You have to know that going in. That does not mean you're only going to encounter the people that hate what you do. And that doesn't mean that the loudest voices are going to be those people who hate what you do with like a fiery hot passion. What I'm talking about is the idea that some of the population of the people who will consume whatever you produce, they're going to dislike it. You have to know that going in. You have to be okay with that. It's not because you did it wrong. It's because those assholes are going to hate everything everybody does, because it makes them happy to do that, because they are both emotionally and mentally disconnected from growth. Like, that's on them. That's their problem. They need therapy, like oodles of fucking therapy and some empathy and compassion. And it's not your job to write a thing to bend to like a twisty straw, like bend to their wishes. That's not a thing you should be doing, because it's not about making them happy, because they're never going to be happy. It's about making you happy. So if you're looking for a genre that is most forgiving, all you can do is write the best thing you can write, no matter the genre, whatever it is, and be confident and comfortable with the fact that you did your fucking best, and you put together all the tools you could to the best of your ability, and you put the best support staff around you could, and you are just rolling the dice and seeing what happens. And that's good enough. Don't think that some places are more accepting than others automatically, and that you are just not good enough to get in them, because that's not the case. It's going to be a rough ride no matter where you go. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm telling you, look, there's going to be some rough spots. Sometimes there will be, sometimes there won't be, sometimes it'll come later, but there's going to be rough spots. You have to know that going in. I'm not saying avoid it. If you're on the fence about like, oh God, I don't want any rough spots, well, let me tell you about basket weaving or painting birdhouses or literally any other creative outlet. Because here in this writing space, you're going to encounter some rough spots from time to time. How you navigate them is by not trying to make those people fucking over there fucking happy, because they're never going to be happy. You make you happy, and they'll be okay. What a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. Let's go see who's here tonight, shall we? Are there any questions from anybody in chat? Oh, man. I also have a shocking report. There's no tea tonight. It's just water. I've been working all day on stuff. Hello. I've been working. It's so good to see all of you. I've been working all day. Didn't have time to make a pot of tea after this morning. So I've been doing water. I do have a root beer because it's been a day, but that's mostly for me. Mostly it's just water tonight. I know, everybody's shocked for sure. Well, it's so good to see you. Hi, thank you. I'm so glad you could join with your gaming schedule being as it is, and it's so nice to see you. Thank you for saying hello. Thank you for just being here. It's wonderful to have all of you. It's delightful. Any questions? Shall we march on then? I swear I'm not trying to rush. It's just been one of those days where I'm moving it like a million miles an hour. On we go. On we go. Question number 4. What can watching reality television teach me about writing? All right. Look, we're going to have a moment, you and me, okay? There's some reality television I really, really like. It's older. Like, it's been a while. I don't watch. I'm aware of the current trends. Like, I know The Bachelor is a thing. I have never seen an episode. It has something to do with flowers, right? But like, I'm not like, oh my God, The Bachelor. But if you want to go further back, like early Hell's Kitchen, I was down for. The early 2 or 3 seasons of Survivor were cool. What was it? There was one with guns that was out right around 9/11. I was not sober for a lot of that. So I just remember there were shooting competitions on the History Channel that were kind of neat. Although I look back at it now and it's a little bit like cringy, but I kind of like some reality television. There's apparently some new ones on streaming services that are supposed to be like dramatic and like soapy, and I want to check them out. There's one with Alan Cumming. I'm supposed to be like, oh my God, I'm going to watch it over the weekend after I get my work done. But reality television can teach us a lot about writing in general, no matter what you're writing, because it offers us, let's give you 4. Let's give 4 things reality television can really do to help your writing. 1, it teaches you the value of editing, because I hate to tell you this, reality television is like the least real thing available because it's heavily edited. Scenes are cut short. Dialogue is altered through sentence deletion. It's cut and shot differently to change what you picture in your head and what you see on your screen to evoke maximum emotional currency. It didn't always play out the way you see it, despite what the hosts swear up and down they do. So one, reality television can teach you a hell of a lot about how to edit, how to trim and picture scenes. Okay, I'm going to stop this scene here because it looks like these two people are really going to have a moment. I'm going to cut it here because I'm creating tension to figure out who did the thing in the next chapter. It helps you understand where to cut and where to move and how to frame things. That's big item number one. Item number two. Reality television lives and dies by the emotions it evokes. Whether we're talking about, who in the house is causing drama, because I watched the real world growing up, who in the house is causing drama, or what person is forming an alliance with this other person or something like that. It allows you to speak and deal in the lowest, and I say lowest meaning simplest or most base, not necessarily lowest like shittiest. But it deals with the most primal and the most foundational emotional currency. How do we get to that emotion? Rather than have these nuanced discussions about like the metagaming feasibility of forming an alliance for this many episodes exactly and then turning on your partner, rather than get into some kind of like great strategy on high, we're going to side with that person and dislike that person. Now, part of that's reinforced by how we're framing and editing things, but part of that is also framed in how the character is being portrayed. If they come across like an asshole, we're going to not like them as much as the people who are like, oh, golly gee, shucks, I just want to do well. Reality television lives and dies by its emotional currency and the ability you can get as a writer to pull that emotional, press the emotional buttons, pull the emotional strings, other prepositional verb phrases about movement with emotion. Like if you can get to the emotion of a character in a given scene and in a given context, you can really affect the viewer, the reader, in a dynamic way. Third thing reality television can teach you, people will watch it. Like if you can speak this emotional language and you can frame scenes and you can do a lot to engage and hold the audience's attention, no matter what the genre is, people will consume it. So if you're able to write whatever the hell you're writing, science fiction, fantasy, romance, drama, historical fiction, whatever, if you can engage your audience and hit those emotional things, people will like stay glued to your stuff. They'll want to know more. They'll come sign up for your newsletter. They'll get the sequel. They'll pre-order. They'll do all that stuff. That's a huge thing because you know how many somebody told me there's 40 something instances of Survivor if you count everything. I can't possibly fathom that. Apparently some things were truncated. I don't think that number is legit, but there's at least 20. Some of these shows have been on for Big Brother is on some iteration in double digits. And it's because people keep coming back. It's because people will come back to hit those emotional notes, to get those feelings, to pay attention, to see what happens next, because it doesn't necessarily speak a particularly highbrow, convoluted, I'm going to write a major saga story with 15 characters all worrying about a pointy metal chair. We're not aiming real high. That doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It's just that this appeals to people on a certain level in a way that really presses some buttons and gives them some brain chemicals. So there's your third thing. Last thing reality television can give you, it knows when to stop, but then it also doesn't stop. Here's what I mean. So we just talked about reality television comes back around and around again and again and again. Another season of this, another season of that. Oh my God, there's another, isn't there a Bachelorette? Wasn't that a thing? There's permutations and flavors, and it isn't just one and done. We come back for another season, another round of this stuff. But at the same time, each instance of it, each season, each whatever is a certain amount of stuff. Whether it's a certain number of contestants to be eliminated, so there's a given number of episodes, or whether it's a certain number of weeks it runs, or whatever. It knows the framework. It knows the size it needs to be. Your book is that size. Your book is the size it needs to be. You're not trying to write one book that's going to cover everything so you never have to write a sequel or you never have to create a series. You just throw a phone book at people and then never write another thing again. But at the same time, you know that you can. You can always add another book. You can always do another story. You can always make another project. These are the lessons reality television teaches us, not just because, oh my God, we can learn how to make this character really dramatic by having someone else turn to her and say, you bitch. But instead, we can also just generally build this idea that, like, we can manipulate and we can control and we can frame scenes and contextualize them and give the reader the impression we want them to have that they will agree with, that makes sense with what the story is. Reality television is great fuel for writing, while also being, for some people, very comfortable, consumable. We can just hang out and watch this stuff and not really think too hard, because it's just, oh my God, they said what? Ooh, they did this? Ooh. And for a lot of people, that's a nice relief from all the everything going on. You know what I mean? Let's go to the next question. Question number 5. How do I keep my story engaging once the climax is done? How do I keep readers satisfied before the final pages? I don't think in the entire time I've been doing this, anybody's asked this question. So thanks for asking it. I really appreciate it. There's a window that they're talking about in a story. Most people take this to be the third act, but it's pretty flexible depending on where your climax is and how it ends and how long it takes to end it. And there's a real question as to, well, why does somebody keep reading once the climax is done? Well, we've killed the monster. Why don't we just close the book and call it a day? The murderer has been, discovered. Why doesn't just the next sentence the end? And that's because resolution is a critical part of writing as a craft. It's not just important to, wrap up the loose threads you laid out in the story, but to give that emotional and mental tie together, glue everything together, show the bad guys getting their comeuppance, or show the good guys learning a valuable lesson, or show some kind of closure to the stuff that's been happening. And how you're going to maintain that engagement, how you're going to make that happen, is you're going to make sure that whatever that closure is, whatever that connective stuff is, it makes sense, appropriate to your climax. So if your climax is like a giant civil fucking war, like, oh my God, this whole country is at war, the resolution has to be also of a roughly equal, appreciable size. Because, oh my God, we're tearing apart the whole kingdom and everybody's at war. Well, then once that war is done and everybody's looking around at the carnage and the damage and the broken everything, you have to have an equal, not necessarily an equal amount of words, but an equal amount of emotional weight. We want to feel I'm going to try to do this on frame. An equal amount of balance. So for as much, oh my Godness as the climax was, we also want to get a sense of okay, so we know there's some closure. If your amount of closure in your third act is less than the amount of energy or emotional engagement in your climax, it's not going to feel satisfying. Here's what I mean. So let's say you're writing a fantasy story where a dragon attacks a town. There's your big climax. Your heroes get together. They fight the dragon. Real straightforward stuff, yeah? But if after the paragraph where somebody shoots the arrow and kills the dragon, if your next paragraph is, and then everybody's fine, and then you say the end and close the book, the amount of effort and the amount of emotional engagement we had up to the point of the dragon being killed is totally thrown away because you rushed to get to the end. Again, I want to make this clear. We're not always saying if you spent, I'm going to make a number up, 75,000 words, you don't have to spend 75 on the way out. I am saying, though, that you built up this fight and you built up the, oh, wow, what are we going to do of killing the dragon? You have to, like an exercise, you got to cool down after we work out. We got to lower our heart rate gradually. You got to ease off the gas a little bit and let us coast to a nice conclusion. They'll stay engaged if the emotional connective tissue of the resolution matches or comes close to, because it's not an exact science, comes close to the amount of buildup you gave the climax. They'll stay satisfied. And the amount of space you have between climax and final pages is pretty flexible. It's not like there's a magic number that's supposed to be there. You'll be okay as long as you hit the emotional tone and wrap up the things you need to wrap up, even if it's 5 pages, 10 pages, 30 pages, whatever. Note, if your climax peaks way too early, like you've got 100,000 words and your climax is at 50,000 words and you still have 50,000 words left over, that climax is happening too soon. If your climax is way early, it's really hard to make the remaining part of the book feel satisfying because the big shit happened way over there where it was like distant and remote. For an example of this, go look at the second Hobbit movie. I guess it's the third Hobbit movie where they kill the dragon in the first 5 minutes. And then we have like this long protracted build up to, I guess we have to fight some orcs now too. That's a mishmash. That's a problem where we don't tie things up nicely. And then when we do, all of a sudden it's, we're done. Okay, great. Cool. Off we go. Really make sure you make your effort on your end to balance out your emotional resolution and your plot-based cleanup with the height achieved by the climax. That's how you build satisfaction. That's how the readers stay engaged. That's how you keep your story going when your climax is done. What an awesome question. I really hope that answer makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know, and I will take another stab at it. But let's go see what the next question is. Question 6. I feel like I should have asked for more clarification, but I'm going to take a stab at this anyway. Question 6. What role does innovation play in writing? Now, when this question was asked of me, I am 90% certain I said, hey, what do you mean by innovation? And I'm looking at my notes. They're right here. Hang on. They are right here. And I have no clue what I meant when we talked about it. I just can't remember it. So I'm going to take a stab at it this way. Innovation is the idea that the production and the doing of stuff gets better over time. We're no longer tapping out, clay tablets. We're no longer rolling big ink blocks over typeset blocks. We're producing constantly. Innovation allows us to hopefully and ideally produce our stuff easier and not necessarily faster, but with fewer obstacles. Whether that gives us more speed or not is pretty variable. Innovation is also a matter of education. Over time, we learn stuff. We get better at stuff. And it becomes functionally easier, less stressful, to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Innovation, I think, is critical for growth in writing. You're not going to become a better writer without doing more writing and trying to get better at it. You're not going to get better at understanding publishing if you're only going to publish one thing and then you're never going to do it again. Innovation is critical. Now, that said, especially if you go looking around in like bloggy spaces or some of the long form social media spaces, you will find people who have fallen deep down a hole where they're trying to find the singular best innovative thing that's going to help them succeed. For some people, they swear that's Scrivener. For some people, they swear it's Ulysses, or they swear it's Hemingway, or IA Writer or LibreOffice or who knows what. And I'm going to tell you this so that you really, really understand. If a tool, whatever it is, software, chair, pen, paper, keyboard, mouse, monitor, microphone, cable, machine, whatever, if it's helping you do what you want to do, then great, it works for you. But you don't have to shop around for the one single best thing all the time, because capitalism is going to tell us that we always have to get more. We always have to get the new. We always have to do better, because it's only through our consumption that we improve, because capitalism wants us to consume more things. But the reality is, it doesn't require that much consumption. Yes, you might want to update your software so that it runs smoother. And eventually, yes, you might need a bigger hard drive, or you might need cloud services, or you might need this, or you might need that as things wear out or give up, or they're no longer supported. But to constantly pursue the next thing, as if all of a sudden, when I finally find that software, when I finally find that machine, when I finally sign up for that fill in the blank newsletter or whatever, then my writing will become possible. That's the danger of innovation, the idea that you have to innovate first before you can get started. I can tell you from personal experience that held me back for years, decades, maybe a decade and a half at least, where I would make 1,000 million excuses as to why I couldn't do a thing. Oh, I can't do fill in the blank because I don't have a fill in the blank machine, or I don't have this, or there's no time, or I don't have the right lights, or I don't have the right camera or the right microphone or something. And then when I got these things, all of a sudden, once I was very comfortable with this microphone that I could move all around my space, and once I was okay-ish with my camera, I do wish it would plug straight into the machine, but that's neither here nor there. But once I was okay with it, I don't sit down and read oh my God, this camera will 10x your productivity. I could give a shit. I have a thing that works. I'm going to go with it. Now, maybe that's a function of my age, because as oodles of people have pointed out lately, I'm old. I'm in my 40s. Apparently, to some folks, that's prehistoric. But the idea overall is be careful with your innovation. Innovation does not mean you're suddenly going to do a thing perfectly. Innovation just means you have the ability, if you use the thing that you're comfortable with, to do a thing easier. But easier is not always faster. And don't mistake faster for better, because you could fly through a thing and do a shitty job. But innovation is there to assist and augment what we're doing. But don't fall into the trap of constantly needing to innovate. If something's working and you're okay with it, even if other people are doing like way different shit, doesn't mean you have to. If all your friends jumped off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge? That kind of thing. Just because everybody and their mother has some kind of AI-infused writing assistant does not mean you're bad or wrong or should be shamed or should be sent to the moon or something just because, you have Microsoft Word. If it works for you, whatever it is, if it works for you, use it. That's what it's there for. Keep using what works, ditch whatever doesn't, and you're going to be just fine. So that's the role innovation plays. Are there, as I put more water in my face, are there any other questions from anybody here? You answered that wonderfully. Thank you so much. You got where I was coming from. Yeah, there are a buzz where people talk about, is there anything to it? Yeah, there's a lot of that. Just in the course of doing stuff, there's a ton of buzzwords, so I'm always happy to break it down. When it comes to innovation, oh my God, Jason, this question's awesome. When it comes to innovation, if you're experimenting with form or format, how can you tell if something is working? That's a great question. Let's totally answer this. Okay, you can tell when something is working. Some tool, some device, some whatever. You can tell when it's working when you are able to produce the thing you're supposed to be producing with it with less stress than before you were using it. So if you're using, we'll do a couple examples. If you are using a particular kind of word processor, Ulysses, let's say, and you're encouraged to use it and you find it a better writing experience, so you are more comfortable writing, and maybe, but not necessarily, but maybe your word count goes up because you're writing more frequently because you like using it because it's less distracting, then you would say that's working. But if you are somebody who's trying to, break into podcasting, and so you sign up with, a particular host who's going to charge you out the ass for stuff, and you invest thousands of dollars in this material, and you find out that you don't use 90% of it, that's not necessarily working. Like if what you use, if your experiment produces more obstacle or frustration or confusion or just less satisfaction than not using it, that's how you can tell something's not working. Monitor your stress level. Monitor not necessarily your productivity, though you can. Most people do. But there's more to it than that. It's not just, I wrote more words with this thing than I did with that thing. I did more words with A than B, so A's better. That's a fine criteria if you want to take it there. But there's so much more to it because, you might have written more words, but would you do it again? Would you sit down and do the exact same thing in the exact same way? If you're encouraged by the tool and it's fun or it's easy or you don't sweat it so much. Like an example for me with podcasting, I used to sit here with GarageBand open and just Audacity and just talk and then constantly like freak out over the waveform or whatever. But now I use Descript because it has different functionality and it allows me to do more things fairly easy. And certainly with less stress because it also helps me transcribe what I say as I'm saying it. So if I don't like a word or if I, really fuck something up, I can, once I'm done, go back and delete the word and it cleans my, it makes it sound like I never said the word before. That encourages me to use it because now I don't have to overthink like, oh my God, don't fuck this up, John. You got the perfect thing in your head. Don't mess it up. It gives me a little bit more latitude. When you are encouraged and your stress level is reduced so that your productivity has the potential to increase, that's when something is working. Now, let's wave a cautionary flag at this. If you're the sort of person who's going to constantly worry about whether or not something is working, like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Is it okay if it's not like making the huge bounds I see other people doing? If that's your frequent anxiety headspace, then what you want to look at is, if I go back to doing the different thing, if I go back to doing it how I was doing it before, would I miss anything? So if I switch back from Ulysses to Word or Scrivener, yeah, I'll miss the particular bells and whistles that Ulysses has, but would it really be a problem for me? Would I really sit here and go, oh God, this sucks? If so, then you know it's working because you're tying stress into the production more so than solely measuring the quantity of words you produce. That's how you can tell something is working. Part of this boils down to, hey, trust your gut, which for a lot of writers and creatives is a difficult thing because they, I think, expect something more crunchy than that. They expect something more like tangible, like, oh my God, I did 12% more. Okay. I mean, that's just capitalism brainwashing you for a while, but all the same, it's part of how you feel about doing a thing and would you do it again? That's always the metric I've used. And it's also what has helped me stop like tracking down, oh my God, there's a new Mac Mini with an M2. Well, now I have to research that. How am I going to do that? And what about this? And what about, no, this one's just fine. It's totally fine. Like I'm going to have to replace the laptop eventually because it's starting to make grinding noises. But like, once you find gear and solutions to problems and you're able to produce stuff, you don't always have to keep looking for things if you have solutions that work. Because no one cares how you're solving the problem at that level. They care as an audience or a readership if you've solved the problem. That's all. Great question. Any others? Shall we march on then? Question 7. What would I need to start a writing podcast? Okay, I'll tell you how I started mine, which, by the way, is John Helps You Write Better, available wherever you get your podcasts. Here's what you need. You're going to need some kind of device to record the sound coming out of your face hole, whether that's your phone earbuds, whether that's your wireless headset, whether that's a dedicated microphone, be it USB or XLR. And if you go that route, you're going to need things to plug those plugs into, and you're going to need some kind of software to record it, whether that's the voice memo function on your phone or whether that's a dedicated program, whether it's free or pay, whatever. There's a million different ways. And then you're going to need a place to host it. There are cheaper solutions than others. Some have limitations depending on how you pay for it. Some are very successful. Some are very small and niche. And it depends on what it is you want to produce. Like me, I use Captivate.fm, and it goes out everywhere podcasts are available, and even a few I have never heard of before, because that's what I wanted, because I just wanted to be able to get stuff out, get it on Apple, get it in Spotify, get it on Amazon, call it a day. But beyond that, that's all you need. You don't necessarily need, a soundboard or a complicated series of sliders for volume. You don't need necessarily intro music and outro music. You don't need like high level production values right off the bat. I know that the very successful spaces seem to give the impression that, oh my God, if you are not using a Shure SM7 microphone with a cloud lifter and then, speaking into a completely paneled closet that muffles all the sound and you're editing for hours using the highest level of waveform in order to produce, like, that's nice, but you don't have to do that. Like, the world's not going to come to an end because you don't have a catchy opening jingle. What's more important is that you have enough tools to help you get started, because the hardest thing in doing this is getting started and maintaining it as a regular course of action, to form that habit, to produce it on the regular, be it every day, every week, every Friday, every Saturday, whatever it is. So long as it is able to be heard by someone in some functional, useful format. Yes, there might be an echo. Yes, the audio might sound real distant sometimes. But by and large, it comes down to, can you produce a thing that someone will hear, has the potential to hear? That's going to be job number one. Job number two is, what are you going to talk about? And I'm making that job two because too many people make that job one, and then they swear they're going to figure all their other shit out later. Yes, it's important. But once you figure out that you can record on the voice memo part of your phone and you can just dump it right to Anchor, cool, awesome. But you do have to figure out then, okay, so now I know where it's going, but what am I going to say? I'm not talking about editing. I can tell you that if you want to edit, go pick up a program called Descript. It's the most amazing podcasting editing device I've ever used. It's amazing. What I care about is, well, okay, so you've got the gear and you've got the means. What are you going to do? Are you going to talk about your writing? Are you going to talk about just writing drama? It's just going to be you talking by yourself? Are you going to bring some friends in? Are you going to, just sit there and I don't know, talk shit about books from the 1950s and complain about how shitty old white people were? What are you going to say? Learn that after you figure out how you would get it out into the world. Put those two things together and you can have a podcast. If you need a logo or a graphic, well, Canva, you don't necessarily have to run right out right this second and spend hundreds, if not thousands, on high level production at all ends. You can just get started. The majority of people swear up and down, oh my God, I need to do that. I need to have a podcast. But then when it boils down to it, they really just want like one time to talk into one microphone and say a few things and then go away. So what are you going to do? It's not hard to do once it's going. The momentum carries itself, but at the same time, getting started, where people usually make excuses is, well, I don't have the equipment. Well, the equipment's simple. You can boil it down into nothing if you really need to. But once you have the equipment, what's your next excuse? What are you going to say? That's what matters. And then it's just do that. Do it a lot. Don't worry about monetizing it right away. Don't worry about having a consistent thing. Just keep doing it. And it's okay if your early instances take time for you to figure out what the hell you're saying. That's totally fine. But that's how you would get started. Let's go answer a question from chat. How would you recommend writers build accountability into their workflow? Should it all come from within? How do we balance the need for community with the need for being self-driven? Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, so I want to take each question sort of in pieces, if you don't mind. Writers should build accountability by, well, let's do it from the internal, and then let's do the external, because that's probably the easiest way to answer it. Because I don't think, to answer your second question, it should all come from within. I think a good percentage of it should, but it's not like all me and nobody else. So I think accountability internally, the accountability of self, along with knowledge of self, is important. And I think that accountability comes from, whether it comes from making a handwritten to-do list or tracking it somewhere. Like there's a channel on my Discord about like, hey, here's what I'm doing today. Or just a Post-it note you leave. Where's my Post-it note pile? Right here. Post-it note. You just leave yourself a note as to what's going on and what you're doing. Whether that's just a sense of like, okay, I know tomorrow's Thursday. I have to get this done. I have to get that done. And you just repeat it to yourself all day Wednesday. Part of that accountability has to come from you, because accountability is what helps you get the thing done, because it isn't just like, oh, I know I was supposed to do something. What was I supposed to do? We're trying to make that as concrete as possible. So part of that accountability is there. Notice when I talk about the accountability of self, I'm not talking about judging the quality of my work. It's not like, oh, well, I know I had to do that thing and I sucked at it. It was terrible. No, I'm not talking about judging yourself in terms of accountability. Accountability is a very simple productivity discussion of, did I do the thing I was supposed to do? Period. Not how well did I do it? That's a totally different animal and a totally different thing. But you can build that accountability by being more organized with what you're planning to do, at least from the internal perspective. Write it down, make a to-do list, put it in your phone, leave yourself a note, anything like that, where you communicate to yourself to hold yourself accountable for what you have to do. Here's my to-do list. I will do these things. External accountability is a matter of communicating with other people to say, hey, I'm doing a thing and I'm going to tell you about it. Some people take this too far and, jump off for 5 or 10 minutes. Oh my God, I wrote this scene today where the bread and the Muppets and the chickens and the this and that and the other. And part of that becomes validation seeking, which is not the same as accountability. Accountability is just letting other people know what you're doing. That's a thing that is important, because ideally, if you're making it clear that you're doing this for accountability, if you're making it clear that you're every day I'm going to tell you how much I wrote or when I recorded or how long this took, because I want you, the other person, to tell me or ask me or follow up with me if I'm trying to install it as a habit. So that's the function of external accountability, to keep me moving, to keep that habit forming, to keep things on track. Not necessarily like, are you doing your plot? Did you write chapter 31? Did you make that thing? Did you have that scene with the horse? That's a different kind of accountability. You can get that from a coach. You can get that from an editor. You can get that from a professional in the field. I would not expect that from like Tom, Dick, and Harry down the street, Now, here's your next question. How do we balance the need for community with the need for being self-driven? Those two things to me are very different things, but they are related in the sense that they both impact you. I take it from your question that you are thinking that being self-driven has some element of isolation. And it doesn't. It shouldn't. I should say it that way. Because you can be driven, disciplined, to get your ass in the chair and put your fingers on the keys and produce the thing, whether you have a community or not. If you're using self-drive as a soft, cushy synonym for alone or isolation, then really what you're saying is, I need a community because I feel lonely. And I've been calling it self-drive so that I don't have to deal with the big, giant, scary feeling I feel with loneliness. You can be disciplined and you can be driven and be part of a community. In fact, if you are self-driven, disciplined, organized, and then part of a community, part of that drive and ambition will rub off on other people. It will also freak some fuckers out. Like, people will be really, oh my God, like all of a sudden we were just having fun fucking around, but now all of a sudden all the writers got serious. What the shit is this shit? That's going to be a thing, and that's okay. That's not your fault. You're not wrong if that happens. If you doing you, making your stuff to the best of your ability, makes other people either step up and join in or step out and go away, cool. All's good, because you're going to do you and take care of you and produce what you want to produce. But you balance those two needs by keep doing what you're doing. The need for community is what? Validation, comfort, sexual partners, snacks, recipes, downtime because you've been working and your brain is fried and all of a sudden you just want to chill and, kick it with a few people. That's cool. You gotta, in that case, you're not really asking for community. You're asking just for downtime. And downtime is almost always better with other people because that way you get to vent if you need to vent. But you can balance those needs because they're not at odds with each other. Sometimes you need to be alone and get your shit done. And sometimes you can just get your shit done independent of being alone. Sometimes you just want to hang out and not work. But if the idea is sometimes when I hang out with this group of people, I end up not getting my shit done, then you're talking about how you're not being very disciplined. And that's where you need to say, like, okay, here's a boundary. I have to do this. It's time for me to go work now. I'm going to go close Discord. I'm going to go, mute my phone, put it in airplane mode. I'm going to, I'm not going to check social media. I'm going to stop playing my video game. I'm going to go work. When it's time to work, you work. And when it's time to not work, don't work. But part of that is also accountability from self, because you know your schedule, you know what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're not accomplishing it, if you're not doing it, well, that's not the community's fault. They might be an easy patsy to blame because, oh, come on, you guys, I keep talking to you, I'm not getting this stuff done. That's not their fault that they're talking, man. That's your fault for hanging around when you got other shit to do. You balance those things by the discipline of wanting to get stuff done. Community is going to be there. You should have one. Everybody should have one. Community is how we become more full and complete people. But that discipline to get work done has to start with you, but it can be picked up and carried by others, because they'll turn around and go, how'd it go today? How's that going? Like, hey, did you do that thing yet that you've been talking about doing? Like, that's the accountability externally. But part of it also has to be met by the accountability from you. I keep saying it's important for me to do it. Why am I not doing it? That's accountability. I hope that answers your question. It's a great question. It's a great set of questions. They're all kind of tangled up for an awful lot of people. I hope I helped untangle them in some way. Great stuff. Love it. Shall we march on? Why did I make this one so big? Jesus Christ. Oh, question 8. What can I do when my opening involves elements that I've seen agents, pimps, and other people on social media declare as overdone? How do I figure out if I need to reconsider something or if I just need to keep going as is? Okay, we talked a little bit about this when we were answering that first question about dream sequences and dialogue, where sometimes some authority figures will tell you that stuff is overdone. Now, here's what overdone means. It means that a lot of people are doing it, and they're not really doing anything new or special with it. They're just kind of going along with the herd, moving along the same way everybody else is. There's no real spark of interest. There's no real new dimension. Nobody's really saying anything. It's just kind of more of the same. All right. That's not necessarily a bad thing if you know that if, 2 pages from now, on page 5, we're going to pick up and go in a new direction. But if you're immediately looking at this and saying to yourself, oh my God, I'm using this kind of scene or that kind of scene, and somebody said it's overdone, I'm automatically at fault, I'm automatically bad. That's not true. Again, like we talked about with that dream sequence and dialogue scene up front, it depends on what you're doing with it. Just because other people are doing it does not make it overdone. It's sort of like when you talk to a teenager and they turn around and tell you that like this thing is dead. Like, oh, nobody does it anymore. But you know for a fact somebody somewhere is still doing it. Like, just because it's no longer new, hip, and trendy doesn't mean it's dead. When a thing, an element of your story is overdone, the question becomes not, oh my God, I have to change it, everything's terrible. It's, okay, loads of people are doing this. How is mine different than theirs? Not just, well, it's different because my characters are named A and B and their characters were named C and D. I mean, like, in what new direction, in what new way are you answering the questions posed by that element? So if you're saying, oh, we're starting with a meet cute for my romance novel. Okay, how is your meet cute different than the stock generic, oh my God, I also like item X, he. How is your meet cute different than their meet cute? That's what makes your thing not overdone. Yes, it has a meet cute. And yes, some asshole somewhere is going to turn around and go, oh my God, it's a story with another meet cute. Even though, at least for hetero romance novels, you need a meet cute. It's kind of required. It's like having a dead body in a murder mystery. Just because it's overdone doesn't mean it's overdone. You've got to figure out how you're going to do it different and then really develop and polish your difference. How do I figure out if I should just keep going? Well, what are you doing different? Yep, you have the same pieces everybody else has. How is your stuff different? I would use a car analogy here. Like, well, okay, so you have 4 tires and they have 4 tires, but how are your tires different? Or a food thing. Well, everybody has breakfast. What makes your breakfast stand out? That's the kind of determination you make, whether or not you want to be like, I'm just doing the same waffles everybody else is, or, oh no, my waffles have, like Captain Crunch ground into them or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's a feasible waffle thing. I'm just trying to come up with analogies. But the idea is, if you know you're individuating, not just repeating, and it's not just novel because, well, I'm writing it, so of course it's new. But if you can fundamentally point to on the page the concept or the elements that this is different and I'm not seeing this stuff anywhere else. Like, is your meet cute a necromancer and the skeleton they just raised? That's something I haven't seen before. Is your fantasy party made entirely of the shopkeepers in the town, not the adventurers? That's something I've never seen before. Find a thing, find a dimension, find an angle on the idea that you know other people aren't doing and see how you can interpret it or take it, and then it won't be overdone, and then you should just keep going as you're doing it. But if you are just doing the same thing everybody else is, and there's very little deviation other than names, other than like your writing style versus their writing style, that is a point where you should reconsider. This is where feedback from somebody you trust really comes into play, because for a lot of writers, they are way too close to the situation to really get a good, what's the word I want to use? A good evaluation, a good sense as to whether or not they're painting by numbers like everybody else. I hope that answers that question. It's a little chewy. Go to your feedback, see how you're iterating or developing something in a new way, and then keep going. That's how you do that. And as always, what pimps and other people on social media are declaring does not make it law. That's just shit they're saying. I mean, there are some people who will tell me that, oh my God, no one plays Pokemon games anymore, or, nobody's doing this thing anymore, but here I am doing it. If that's what you dig, that's what you dig. Tim, it was good to see you. Thanks for coming in. It was nice to have you. Have a great night. Enjoy your writing, by the way, and I'll talk to you later. Shall we march on to the next question? Here we go. Question number 9. What are some common growing pains for authors as they develop their craft? And what are some things they should keep in mind during the process? Oh, well, we're going to get a mouthful of water for this because we're going to be here for a hot minute. All right. Common growing pains. I've got a couple, so we're going to bounce all over the place. How about we start with when a writer is getting close to finishing a draft, especially an early draft. A very common growing pain is to begin wondering if it makes sense relative to all the stuff they wrote before. Oh my God, I've written 10,000, 30,000, 60,000, 80,000, 90,000 or more words. Like, the stuff I wrote in the beginning, is it as good as the stuff I'm doing now? Does it still make sense? It's been a long time since I wrote that other chapter. Like, what if it sucks? Totally a common growing pain. Totally a common problem to doubt the early stuff, especially when you're removed from it. The solution, the fix, the thing to keep in mind for that is you can always go back during the revision process and fix it. Not that it automatically needs a fix just because, but you can fix it later down the road if you need to. That's fine. Other growing pain for an author, especially when they start getting feedback from somebody. They immediately feel that given the volume or intensity of feedback, whether it's one red mark or one comment or a ton of comments or whole sections being cut, they will immediately feel that their writing is garbage just because they got edits, just because they got feedback that wasn't only and always, oh my God, this is great. And the fix for that is that's what you want. You should not want it to be all perfect all the time. Just keep going, especially when you're getting started. That's sort of like doing a thing and then having somebody tell you that's fine. Like, you're looking for more material than that. You're not just looking for the, okay, fine. You're looking for an answer. You're looking for a response. You're looking for material that makes a difference. So be okay with it. Just because you're getting notes, just because you're getting edits, just because you're getting feedback, that does not mean you're failing. And just so we're clear, the amount of feedback you're getting, all the red marks, all the deletions, all the comments, more is better than less. Because if it was just very few, like, let me think of a really simple one. How about, this is garbage, rewrite it. If you just had 5 pages highlighted and that was the only comment, that is more crushing and more of a problem than somebody who individually went through line by line and slashed this and cut this and added this and made a note for this and made a note for that. You want somebody there to help give you what you're looking for. So if you're asking somebody to help give you structural advice, or you're asking somebody to see if they will laugh at your jokes, or they're whatever you're asking for, if you're getting that, it can be very common to sit there and feel like, oh my God, I'm getting what I wanted. I must suck. You don't. That's how feedback is. That's how it feels. You're fine. Like that's part of this process. All right, let's go a little further down the road. You've done a draft or two. You're getting slightly closer to publishing. A very common point here you reach is the idea of, oh, it can't be done. Oh, no. There has to be more I have to do. Oh my God. And also it has a companion thing of, oh my God, it'll never be done. There's always, 2 more things, 5 more things, 10 more things to go. It'll never be finished. Both of those things are temporary and not true. It will be finished if you finished it. And it does not go on forever because eventually there's always a next step. How you kind of grapple with that, how you keep that in mind is that's the goal you wanted. You wanted to be done. You wanted to be done making the draft. You wanted the edits done. You want to publish this thing. Like that's your goal. Your goal is getting closer. If you're scared about your goal, say that. If you don't feel you're in a position or in a place or in a community or in a group where you can sit down and go, hey, I'm scared, that's the wrong group for you. Because you should be able, as a part of any community, any group, any whatever, turn around and talk about how you feel. And if other people are like, oh, that's weird, well, they're not the best fit for you because you should be able to express yourself to the people around you who give a shit about you. It's okay to be scared about those next steps. It's okay to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. It's out of my control at a certain point, and that freaks the shit out of me. Yeah, it super does. But it's going to be okay. Like one way or the other, it might not be, somebody might not hand you $100,000 on Tuesday or something, but it's going to be okay one way or the other. It might take a while. It might not go the way you want right away, but it'll eventually get somewhere where you can learn to be happy with it. If you're willing to learn to be happy with it, I guess. Both of those things, the idea that it'll never be finished and, oh my God, it's about to be finished, usually stem from a fear of the future, a fear of control, a fear of I don't know what the next step is. And that's the point where, as a writer, you want to go find somebody who can tell you what the next steps are. They might not be able to like individually tell you, okay, at 10:30 this happens, at 11:45 this happens, and then at 2:00 later that day this happens. But they might be able to tell you, okay, so the next things are, whenever they happen, it'll be this, this, and this. Find tools and resources that will help comfort you as best you can, whatever that might be, and it'll make this a lot easier. Other growing pain. We'll do one more growing pain. If you did a batch of work up front, like whatever, you wrote a book, you wrote 2 books, you wrote a draft, you wrote for some period of time, for some volume of words, without really understanding the business or jargon or structure or information. You just wrote and you loved it. And it was fun and no big deal. And then all of a sudden you started getting some kind of education, whether that was following writers or taking classes or attending lectures or you went to school or anything like that. And you started gaining information that you didn't have. It's very common to go from, oh my God, writing is fun to, oh my God, writing sucks. Why? It stopped being fun. And for a lot of writers, that's the point where they dip out because it's not fun anymore because it turned into work. And they didn't come to work. They came to have a good time. Here's the thing to keep in mind. Eventually, and I don't know how big eventually is because for everybody it's different, but eventually it does go back to being fun. Because when you start out and you don't know better and you're just writing and you're unbound by a lot of things like rules and format and structure and the anxiety and worry about conforming into a set of rules or a set of manuals or plans, you're just producing and you're uninhibited. And that's wonderful. But then all this structure comes along and you're trying to fit in and you're trying to accomplish and you're trying to learn and you're trying to demonstrate improvement. You're trying to do this in such a way that you're showing that you've learned. You're showing you want to be a good student, which is totally fine. Eventually, though, part of being that good student is understanding that not every piece of structure and formula and format and education needs to be applied to your work. Sometimes you have to learn to go, nah, that's not for me. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm going to go over here. And you start unburdening yourself from the expectation and the baggage that you have to do things a certain way. You're going to do you and you're going to do your shit your way, and it's going to be fun again. It does come back around, but you have to be willing to ride it out, because part of what that education can give you is new avenues and new dimensions of fun. Nobody likes learning this shit. I didn't like learning this, and I spent half my life learning this. But I can tell you, when I didn't know any better and I was just giving feedback to writers, that was fun because I was just saying whatever. And as I learned more things and I, like, oh, well, here's narrative gain and here's load and here's a loop theory and here's this and here's that. Here's the triangle. Here's the mountain. Here's the, sawtooth, all the stuff I know. That became a pain in the ass because I wanted to try and get that into everybody's head. Learn this. Do what I did. Grasp this. And then all of a sudden I realized I don't want to spend my time making everybody into the way I think they should be. I want to spend my time giving everybody the best tools they can so they can have the best time they want. So if I'm saying a thing to you and it's totally not clicking, like loop theory did for a lot of people, you don't have to use it. Who gives a shit? You think I'm going to be upset? I don't care. Do what makes you happy. That's what's going to make me happy. So so what if a theory I talk to you about doesn't do diddly squat for you? Totally fine. I'm not going to be mad. Make yourself happy. But it does get fun again. Education is going to give you some more tools that will allow you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And over time, once you're willing to jettison the ideas of perfectionism, or at least loosen your grip on them, or jettison the ideas of expectation because you're just going to do what you're going to do, it does get fun again. I promise. You just have to be willing to ride that out. And it's a tough one to do, but you can totally do it. I believe in you. I hope those growing pains were sufficient. I hope, there's always more. I'm always happy to talk more about it. There's stuff for marketing. There's stuff for, developing and growing your community. There's stuff for, writing a second book. There's loads of different growing pains and there's loads of different solutions. So if you want more, ask. I'll give you some more. But for now, let's march on. Are there any other questions in chat while I continue to kill these glasses of water in front of me? Oh, man. Questions about anything from anybody? Else we will keep moving. Let me just double check my DMs and odds and ends to see if anybody has anything that I missed. Have I watched Jurassic World 3 yet? Can you sum up in one word? I can. I did watch Jurassic World Dominion. I recorded it for Patreon this week. I can sum it up in one word. Yikes. I think, in fact, that's what I summed it up in the Patreon post that you can find over at patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter. It was not a good experience at all. It was a very long recording day, and much like some of those Star Trek movies we covered way back when, and much like some of the monster movies we covered way, way back when, you can listen for my soul dying. It's real rough. There's some moments where I'm just, it was a long day. That took me... There are some pauses in that recording. I think it's a 2 hour, it's 2:20. I think the recording is maybe 2:15. And it's detailed in spots, but there's other spots where I don't say anything because I admit it. This is so bad. I don't know what to say. It was a big mess. I did not enjoy it. The wrap up, I'll tell you, wrap up's real good. Wrap up. Cause I had, a lot of stuff. Oh, there's another question. How do you know if your story is too cliche? I love this question. First of all, hi, thanks for being here. It's awesome that you're asking this question. Let's talk about two cliche for a minute. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to come back over here so you can look at my face. Cliche is not automatically bad. That's really important and you need to know. So the issue with cliches is that they're just like stock parts by default. We're not customizing. We're not adding bells and whistles. We're just kind of painting by all the numbers and leaving everything very generic. Like we're making a generic character in a role-playing game. We're not adding any flair or any flavor. We're not personalizing or tailoring in any way. That's the downside with cliche. If your story is too cliche, you're saying that you don't have anything really and truly original. You've got yet another hero and yet another plot, and it's more of the same stuff, and you've not done anything to sort of tailor it. You've got another hero with some stubble and a troubled backstory, and they're doing something with another prophecy, and there's going to be a betrayal, but there's also going to be a love interest, and like you can only name the progress of the story based on the very stock, we've seen it a million times before parts. That's too cliche. What you want to get away from, in order to get away from that, what you want to look for is, what are you doing different? Okay, so you have a character with some stubble and a troubled backstory. Loads of people do. What are you doing different? Are we giving them some extra stuff? Are we expanding on their troubled backstory? Are we adding more elements? Are we taking some stuff away? What are you doing to take your cliche as a base and build from it? Because once you start building from it to any degree, it's no longer cliche. That's really where we want to go. That's really what we're looking for. It's if you have all the stock parts and you're not individuating, like, oh, I have another, masterless samurai roaming the fields. He occasionally fights monsters, but one day he dreams of being, something else. Or I have a character who's been prophesied to fight the bad guy. Oh, God, I'm falling asleep just even thinking about it. If that's what you're doing and that's all you have and you can't point to anything past that, that's too cliche. And how do you fix that is by taking those elements and doing something with them. Okay, yeah, you've got a puppet who wishes he was a real boy. What are you doing different? How is your Pinocchio your own Pinocchio? Are you making Pinocchio a necromancer? Are you making Pinocchio out of cookie dough? Are you hybridizing the gingerbread man and the Pinocchio stories? Find the cliche that you're building from and deviate. Change it in some way. Add to it. Put a spin on it. Torque it. Bend it. Qualify it. Do more than just change the paint color. If I can use a more visual metaphor, right? Like, oh my God, you have a car. I have a car. Mine's gray. Yours is blue. Okay, that's sort of an iteration, but can we push it? Can we do a little bit more? You added the heated leather seats. Cool, good job. Find how you can personalize those elements, and the clichéness disappears. Also, if you've crafted it well enough, if you've got all your pieces and they're all working and you're hitting your theme and you've got a strong plot and you're detailing it well and you put the movie in the reader's brain, the amount of cliche ultimately won't matter to the reader because they'll feel satisfied by what they're reading. And if you're coming at this from what will the traditional publishing world say? You can't please everybody. And some amount of cliche is kind of necessary because ultimately you're going to run into a plot and 3-act structure. Those are cliches. So how do I want to say this? Don't get so bogged down and worried about the nature or the percentage. The percentage of cliche. It's not about that. Take your cliches and figure out how you're personalizing them. What an amazing question. I love talking about cliches. That stuff's great. Love it. Thank you so much for your question. Feel free to ask oodles more all the time. But we're going to go on to the next question. Question number 10. Where does the old stigma around self-publishing start? Okay, here's where it starts. Somewhere in the late 90s, digital publishing really started taking off with the advent of the home computer. and people realized they could start putting things out on their own that had roughly the same comparable value, meaning appreciable, like I can look at it and see it and hold it in my hands, the same level of engagement that the published major stuff could do. The books started to look and feel like books. We were printing on the same paper. The quality of story wasn't necessarily there because all of a sudden people had more access to the means of production, but they didn't necessarily have the skills for production. And the stigma started there because it was immediately like, oh, you self-published. Any idiot and their mother can self-publish. This was a thing told to me in 1996. Any idiot and their mother can self-publish. So we don't really take that very seriously. We said in 1996 in traditional publishing. And we always assumed in 1996 in publishing, really up through like 2010, if not 2015 in traditional publishing, that there was always going to be this talent gap. And that's the stigma around self-publishing. Because anybody can do it, there's no longer that gatekeeping sense of should it be done. You know, we want it. It's that Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park. He didn't stop to think if you should just because you could. That's where the stigma starts. Late 90s, digital publishing, zine proliferation, all the way into like early laser printing. That gap in quality and the frustration felt by the lack of gatekeeper created the idea that, well, since you don't have someone approving it, you don't have someone telling you it's good, you don't have the rejection process, then it must be garbage because you're not letting somebody say no to you 10 times. You have no incentive. According to traditional publishing, there was no incentive to improve because you could just roll the stuff out the door. So you didn't have to get better. You could just bloat everything. And for a while, and for a lot of people even today, that's still a thing. How many writers do you know who are like, I don't need an editor. I'm just going to publish it and I'll be fine. Like, look, you need an editor. You need somebody to come along and help you get better at this. You need a writing coach. You need some feedback. You need somebody doing something. Just because you can roll this thing out by yourself, just because you can dump it off to AI and be like, aha, I'm using blah, 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 I'm using this thing. Great, sure, good for you, but it's not the same as getting a person to do it. You can make the argument that that's not that different from the stigma around self-publishing, but at the same time, I can point to fundamental differences between that software everybody swears is so great and the skill somebody with 20 years experience has. And while one might get it done sooner, the question turns into, well, why are we racing? Because if you can do it any time and anybody can do it, what's the rush? Why not do the best job you can? But the stigma starts way back when the gatekeepers were cut out of the system because they were the ones who started the stigma. The fact that the lower quality stuff that we didn't normally see suddenly started going out into the world was and is a problem. You get an awful lot of people firing off really not great text, whether it's violent or sexist or aggressive or homophobic or something like that. You can really get some crap out there. But then it becomes more, instead of having a gatekeeper say, no, this shouldn't have been made, now that decision-making process falls to the potential consumer. You have to choose. Do I want to put my attention and my focus on the book that promotes fascism and has the sexual violence against children? Or do I want to put my attention over here with this other story that, you know, has giant robot ducks? Or whatever John's next example is, you know? But the stigma dates back to the proliferation and access of people being able to do the thing. That's where it starts. There's no one particular story that started it. It was just the ability of, what do you mean somebody can just press a button and poof, out of the printer comes a thing? That's not how we like things. The status quo has been upset. Oh no! That's where the stigma starts. Great question. Question 11. I need another mouthful of water. Instead of AI, what should a tech bro do to help writing as an industry? Other than not be a part of it? Okay. There are a billion, trillion tech bros, whether they are Silicon Valley or Wall Street or anybody in between, that really want to tell you that you can sign up for some software. You can go to one of those 5 websites that's going to change the internet. And of course, it's a 4-pay subscription service that involves AI in some way, shape, or form. that will tell you how to change your writing, whether it's a thing that's going to write your sales copy or a thing that's going to write your website or a thing that's going to generate a cover by stealing somebody else's art, or whether it's somebody who's going to give you a plot idea, even though it's going to steal from somebody else's work. Like AI. People love it because it simplifies a process that they feel should be simplified rather than celebrated, rather than improved. What a tech bro should do, if we have to have them, if they have to like exist within this space, they should be looking for what makes writing important rather than functional. Like, why do we create books as stories? Like, why do we tell stories? It's not just to make profit, because it's art, not capitalism at this point. So like, why do we tell the story? Why are you, like, person who asked me the cliche question, are you writing your book because you want to pay your mortgage? Because if that's the case, you better find a different way in the interim to pay your mortgage. So rather than putting a premium on the speed of production and the money earned thereof, look at it in terms of how can we produce the best art that is the most personal and the most moving? Are we going to farm that out to a machine that generates information based on a pool of data supplied to it? Or are we going to come to understand the psychology of people better? Are we going to look and say, these are the things that affect and move folks, and how are we going to, deal with it? Yes, absolutely, sir. Passive income would be nice. Believe me, as somebody who got snow all over their shoes standing in lines today for stuff, passive income would save me a whole lot of trouble. I understand. But at the same time, not everything needs to be passive to some degree. Like, it's nice, absolutely. And I believe the world, ultimately should either supply money just because semi-passive, love semi-passive, but the world should either abandon money altogether because money is an illusion we created, or, just give us some because they can. But a tech pro should aim more about the art rather than the function. And writing would be helped all along. In the same way that if you go back several hundred years, the really rich people gave artists like, a house in their backyard and a big block of stone and said, hey man, carve me a horse. And then it turned into like a dick measuring competition about whose artist made the better shit. And then it was a little exploitative to some degree because, these people went blind or whatever, trying to like chisel in the dead of night and make the fresco to impress their boss. But at the same time, like, that gave access to art we are still talking about today. So I think a tech bro should look at stuff as art more so than commodity and capitalist thing we can sell. I think that's what a tech bro should do. I don't ever see that happening though. Most tech bros are way too interested in crushing it and doing some number X, like 10X or 5X, their genitals or something, whatever. They're interested in having a bigger number than somebody else. It's fucking pointless. Good question though. Love the question. On we go to the next. Question 12. How can a writer practice writing action scenes? Oh, good. We're going to get into an exercise. Here's an exercise. So, step 1, action scene, I'm making air quotes, as a thing does not only mean the big car chase. It doesn't only mean the big CG battle with the robots or the explosions or the space fight or whatever. Action scenes are just stuff happening. Here's how you can practice it. If you're willing to embarrass yourself slightly, mime part of it out in the mirror. Like, if you are writing a boxing scene, shadow box. If you are miming like the hacker's going to hack into the computer, then hack on the invisible typewriter in front of you and see what happens. Like, figure out how a character, a person embodied and you're pretending to be them, figure out what their action would be. And if you have multiple people in the scene, well, then you're going to do this in multiple pieces. But figure out what their actions are. Okay, they're typing on the keyboard. They look up at the monitor. Sometimes they type over here. They're typing urgently because somebody's coming in to kick through the door. Then you pause, freeze them in your mind. So there's somebody hovering over the keys. Now you're going to go pretend to be the person on the other side of the door. They're kicking in the door. Now, please don't actually kick in your door, but mime it. Like throw some ninja kicks in there and pretend the door is flying. Like, make an effort. Mime it up. This is great, by the way, if you have little kids, because you can immediately start playing a game with them. It's rad as hell. But mime the parts. That is one way to get better at practice writing your action scenes, because you'll think about the individual actions you're taking, and those individual actions, you're going to have to figure out a sentence or sentences that detail those actions. So if we're typing away on the keyboard, where do we want the reader to pick? What do we want the reader to picture? We want to have them picture fingers on keys. Because if we just have this zoomed out view with the camera, like, where's my camera frame? Like where's my camera frame? Way up here, right? Like floating in space, then we're losing some of that intimacy. We're losing some of that tension. So we're going to figure out where to position the camera in order to like tell the best visual story. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it. Make a list of all the actions everybody in the scene is taking in order. This happens, then that happens, then this happens, then that happens. Number it. Figure out, like, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, here's 4, for however many things. Don't worry about it in terms of paragraphs. Don't worry about it in terms of sentences. Just make a bullet list of actions. John does this, Tim does that, Kevin does this, John does this, Tim does that, etc., over and over and over, till you get through the whole scene, okay? Then, instead of trying to write it in order, though that is a strategy you can do, just do all the, if you've got 3 characters, do character A. Do all the John stuff, leaving room on the page for all the Tim stuff and all the Kevin stuff. Or do all the Tim stuff and not the John stuff. Pick one and do all of it. Then pick another guy and do all of it. And learn to weave the two together. It's going to feel a little blocky in this method, because now instead of writing linearly from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, we're thinking sectionally. Here's all the John stuff. Here's all the Tim stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But it's going to give you a better sense of what one person is doing at any one time. And it's going to help give you a more complete picture overall. The third method we already talked about, which is just write it in order and individuate each action. So anytime you're writing a part of the action beat, they're driving the car, they're leaning out the window, they're shooting at the bad guy, whatever that is. Each action is the only action you're talking about at a time. Are you going to give it 1 sentence, 2 words, 5 words, a paragraph? This isn't a contest to see how many words you can spend on one thing, but it's the only thing at the time you should give attention to. And once you complete that thing, move to the next thing. And it's the only thing you're giving attention to. Those are focusing and organizational exercises that will radically improve the depth and quality of your action scenes, rather than just, he does this, this happens. Rather than speed through it and just use the most evocative language. You want to make sure the reader feels like it's happening right in front of them. They want to feel like they have a front row seat. Get there and your action scenes will take massive steps forward. What an awesome technical question. Let's go do question 13. I need more water. Question 13. What are 3 pieces of advice you'd give an author who is starting a first draft tomorrow? All right. Here is what I would say to an author starting tomorrow. Let's see. Where would I organize this? 1, you do not have... There is no magic amount of things you have to get done per day. Your story doesn't suddenly become garbage or less valid because one day you write 100 words and the next day you write 10. Or one day you write 1,000 and the next day you write 6. The amount of words you produce per day does not determine the quality of you as a writer. Because it's not how much you write at any one time, it's that you wrote at any one time. When you had the opportunity, did you write? Not did I write well, not did I write perfect. Did you write? Yes, no. That's item number 1. Because a writer who's starting their first draft tomorrow is not going to have the same quality of writing that somebody who's been writing for 20 years is going to have. That's just incredibly super unlikely. So rather than lean in and go, oh my God, you're going to suck at this because it's your first draft and all first drafts are garbage because we want to do better than just keep repeating that nonsense. We're going to set more realistic and relative expectations. Hey, the fact that you're writing matters. So write when you can, and when you can write as best you can. However much. Big, little, medium, write as much as you can, as best you can, when you can. That's item number 1. Item number 2. Despite the amount of fighting on the internet, the fighting over knowing particular jargon or getting engaged in this fight or figuring out you're going to die on that hill versus not dying on this other hill, the best thing you can do is just whatever the story is in your head, however complete it might be, however detailed it might be. If it's more detailed in some areas than others, it's all fine. Your job is to get the story out of your head, period. Don't worry about show versus tell. Don't worry about too many prepositions. Don't worry about cliches. Don't worry about tropes. Don't worry about what somebody in publishing said. Your job for your first draft is to get the story out of your head. And if that means your story pulls up short and in your head you had imagined this thing is 100,000 words and 75 chapters, and it turns out that it's 80,000 words and 30 chapters, it's fine. Your job is to get your story out of your head. That's advice. Piece of advice number 2. Piece of advice number 3. It doesn't really matter how you get it out of your head as long as you get it out of your head. It would help to put it all in one place, to put it all in one Word document, to put it all in one Google Doc, to put it all in one file. That'd be great. You don't have to. If you want to end up typing some in a note and typing others in Word and typing others in Google, that's fine. Eventually, you're going to have to, corral all this information, but you don't have to do it one certain way when you do it. It's super helpful. It's so much easier down the road if all your writing happens in one place, but sometimes that's just not feasible. So rather than worry about, oh my God, I have to get this certain software. Oh my God, I need this certain kind of chair. Oh my God, I need this and this and this and this and that and this and that and this and that. Rather than worrying about that stuff, just write it down. However, record it. If you've got to do a chapter of dialogue and you're in the car because you got to deal with your kids and you got to pick them up from school and it sucks and you're tired, just leave yourself a voice memo. Write yourself a text message. Send yourself an email. Whatever you need to do. Get the story out of your head. Get it down somewhere in whatever medium possible. Don't worry about the jargon. Don't worry about anything else. Your job is to just tell the story from beginning to end. I'll throw in a fourth piece. There are going to be times where you're not going to want to finish, where you're going to be fed up, where you're going to be frustrated, where it's going to not be as fun as it used to be or not be as much fun as it should be or whatever. It's going to feel like a little bit of work. It's going to feel a little bit of a struggle. On those days, you're going to be faced with a choice. Do I stop today and tell myself I'm going to continue later, whatever later is, or am I going to make an effort? Am I going to at least try today? Sometimes it is not always wise to force the story forward. Sometimes it's better to take a day. Take a day off. Go ahead, put your feet up. It's cool. The world is burning down. Like, I get it. It's not the end of the world. What matters isn't that you stopped. It's that you came back. So on those days where you're absolutely positively just cooked, you just couldn't. That's fine. Take the day. Come back tomorrow. Come back when come back soon. But there are some days where it's really, you have the time and you have the energy, but you kind of got a case of the I don't wannas because you would rather be doing something else. Those are the days where you need to do something. Those are the days where you have to choose your writing over something else. Remember, it doesn't matter how much you write, it's if you wrote. So maybe, you write 100 words and say, okay, I wrote today, and then you go do the thing you want to do. Oh my God, I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to go jump on Facebook. I want to do this. I want to do that. Great. 100 words, 2 paragraphs. Just do that. Okay. Just do that. Let's throw a fifth thing in. You don't have to write in order. You want to jump around? You want to hopscotch through your story? Cool. Let's do it. Eventually, the book needs to be put into an order so it can be produced or edited or read or whatever. But when you're writing it, especially a first draft, no one's going to know that you wrote chapter 31 before you wrote chapter 22, unless you tell them. But there's really no reason to tell them. So you don't have to write an order. You could hopscotch around. You're going to end up having to fill some holes later if you do, but that's easy. That's what we have organization for. Let's throw one more piece in. if you're not organizing this in some way, shape, or form, be that an outline or a bullet list or a number list or a scene list or something, you will fail. You will fail. I don't care. Because if you attempt to do this without that organization, you will not reach the level of like quality and structure that you could if you had organized it. This is the difference between like, I'm just making up dinner as I go, but not being real familiar with what it's supposed to be, and it not turning out the same way that if you stopped and looked at the recipe and said, it's a tablespoon. It's fun and nice to freewheel it and do whatever, but after a while, that enthusiasm and that sort of fly by the seat of your pants bullshit runs a little tiring because you're always going to have to get that spark to drive you forward. Whereas if you were motivated and organized and were like, okay, I know what I want to write next because it's on my piece of paper, it's in my outline, it's in my Excel spreadsheet, whatever, then it always helps keep you on track. Even if you write it out of order, you've got a sense of what comes. Makes it a lot easier to accomplish more things, get you closer to your goal, whatever your goal might be. So those are some 3+ pieces of advice I would give an author. Let's just do one more just for the fuck of it. It's never going to be perfect. So, don't worry about perfect. There's no reason to worry about perfect. There isn't a perfect. There is I did the best I could at the time. Aim for that. Okay? Good question. Love that question. Now, over here in chat, someone has said, Stephen King, ? I need a verb. I don't understand your question. Like, what about Stephen King? He's older than I am. He lives in a different state than I live in. He's got old taste in music. He's a biped. I need a verb. Give me something so I'll follow your train of thought. I'm just not sure what you mean. Other than that, any questions? Let me jump back to any other questions from anybody for anything? Wow, it's 8:40 already? Holy shit. Stephen King is an author who writes their story without a plan or outline. No, false. They organize. I know they organize. I've talked to their editor. They organize. Everybody does. Everybody's got a plan. At a high enough level, you need one. They won't let you out the door without it. It might not be the most like rigorous Roman numeral capital letter kind of thing, but they have a plan. It might be a bullet point list, but they got a plan. Everybody does. And he's been doing it long enough that he still does it. You're going to need a plan. You're just going to need a plan. There's no way around it. Other questions, issues. Why is this thing blinking? I don't know why it's blinking. Other questions, issues, etc. Else, we will get out of here. We will go to that sweet, sweet outro. Shall we march on? Many traditional stories have a protagonist who learn from character positive. Yes. Many traditional stories have a protagonist who learn positive character traits as part of their arc. Yes. That's how arcs work. Oh, it's my pleasure to answer questions. You know how much I love them. Let's go to the outro. I got to wrap. Let's if there's nothing else, we will move along because I still got to process this audio. Is it okay to write a character who learns warped traits? Like, who do you think is going to get mad at you? You think your mom's going to be mad at you? You could write a character who learns whatever. You could write a character who learns nothing. Are you asking my permission? Like, you have my permission to write whatever the fuck you want to fucking write. Go ahead. Make yourself happy. Do the best job you can. I'm not sure, like, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, do that. Let me know how it goes. I'm not trying to be flippant or anything, but yeah, it's totally okay. It's okay. Go ahead, do that. I am an industry professional. This can be your formal permission slip. It is totally okay to write. Just write a thing. What are the pitfalls? The pitfalls. You're going to run into a couple different. Well, one set of pitfalls is going to depend on what the story is. So if your character learns some warped traits that don't necessarily lead to anything, whether that's a positive character arc resolution or an explicitly negative character arc resolution, if your warped traits don't really get you anywhere, but like, yeah, the character learned them, but it didn't really resolve one way or the other, it's not going to feel very satisfying to read. 2, you might experience some reader feedback issues where readers, depending on the genre, depending on how you frame the story, you might run into a situation where the reader has an expectation of the story going in one direction, and your active, aggressive, declarative movement away from that might give them some grief, and you might get some pushback from that. Now, maybe you don't give a shit about it, but maybe you do, because maybe they're going to bring up something you didn't think about, but it's possible you will get a response from a reader that isn't what you're expecting. 3, there are times where writing warped traits can be seen as an author just trying to be edgy. Like everybody's 14 and they just learned how to swear, kind of edgy. And it doesn't necessarily make for the most satisfying story. It's kind of like I'm just doing it because I can, as opposed to I'm doing it with a purpose or a utility. So you might run into some feedback or frustration there. But by and large, from a narrative perspective, when you have a character picking up not necessarily positive traits, but a wild, expansive traits, some good and some bad, some of those traits are going to get lost in the wash depending on what the character arc is. You don't always need every trait to sit into the character arc because you don't always need that many traits to begin with. It can lead to bloat, and it can slow the arc's progress down because all of a sudden I'm learning like 5 things, but only 4 are important to the character, or only 3 fold into the story in some way. So those are the immediate concerns, because a lot of that comes down to what you're writing and how you're writing it. A lot of it's just how you're wording it. Because it's also about the degree of how warped it is, because it's warped based on what? Like, is it warped based on reader expectation? Is it warped based on in-world storytelling? Like, the degree matters here, but also that comes down to how you're writing it. That's what I would start with, and then it just depends on what you're writing. Good question, though. Love it. Anything else? This was a really good chat. I'm very pleased with this. This one was a good one. All right, let's go to the outro. Let's get out of here. It's been a day. There we go. The outro did an outro. I'm so glad it did, though. I want to thank everybody for being here. This one was really, really good tonight. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this and this is your first time checking it out, feel free to check out the rest of the YouTube stuff. There's plenty of material there. This one was really good. It'll go up on YouTube, soonish, a couple hours. It'll be available as a podcast within about an hour or so, or on the podcast stream, which is available everywhere you get podcasts. Just search for John Helps You Write Better. And if you liked this, and if this is the sort of thing you really enjoyed and wanted to see more of it, the best thing you can do is jump over to patreon.com/John Helps You Write Better. And $2 a month, man, keeps the lights on and keeps me making these chats. If you want to get some individual help with your work, jump over to johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com. I've got openings not this week, but next week. This week's book. But thank you so much for being here, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Wash your hands. Tell people you love them. All power to all people. Do your best. And I will talk to you the next time I see you. When will the next time I see you? Let's see. The next time I see you is February the 1st. Holy shit, it's February already. February 1st, right back here at 7 p.m., both on YouTube and Twitch. Thanks for being here, guys. I will talk to you very, very soon. See ya!